everyone. Welcome to the third class of Jewish ethics and light of Pirkei Avot. In this wonderful series, we talk a little bit about different, I would say, events, moral questions, current events that happens in Israel and outside that are tangent into the Jewish world. And we try to see what does a Torah specifically focusing on Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah for forefathers, the most moral codex that we have, the most important moral codex that we have in our Jewish library. What does this Pirkei Avot have to say about the moral ethics and current ethical questions that we're dealing with? In the first class, if you remember, we spoke about subsidizing daycares for Bet Midrash fellows, Avrahim, for students that learn Torah and they're not going to work. What does the Torah have to say about learning Torah and not engaging in any occupation? In the second class, hello Nathan, good to see you. Hello Judy. In the second class, we dived into the question of how come, the very, very challenging moral question, how come there are rabbis and Torah scholars that are performing sins and very awful sins. We tried to understand whether learning Torah and being learned in Torah and Judaism is something that can prevent a rabbi or a Torah scholar from sinning, from transgressing. We talked about it last time, 2 weeks ago. It was a very complicated issue. And today, for our last of those series of the three, I want to ask a question not about rabbis, not about Jews in general. I want to ask a question about Judaism. A very important question that I know many of us asked ourselves, and maybe we don't have a clear answer, and maybe we'll not have, even after this class, maybe we will not have a clear answer. And this is a question of racism. Is Judaism racist? Is Judaism racist? We know we call ourselves the chosen people. What does it mean when we say we're the chosen people? How come a nation that suffered from racism in its worst form just 80 years after can still stand upright and say, we are the chosen people? Is there racism in saying that? What does it mean that we say we're the chosen people? And we'll try to learn it first through a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, and I'll take you on a journey between different Torah scholars from different eras, trying to understand and explain how, according to their eyes, is the fact that Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, is counted and called the chosen people. And then I'll try and give, as we do usually here in this series, by diving into the story, the lifetime of the rabbi that we will see immediately in the Mishnah. We'll try and understand and have maybe a fourth answer, another one. What does it mean that we're the chosen people, and whether that means Judaism has a racist core in it or maybe not? In order to open that, it's going to be all have your sources. It's also sent in the emails and also in the chat box. You all have the sources. We're going to start with reading, as usual, the Mishnah highlighted in source number 1. We're going to read a Mishnah by Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, will talk about him and about his story, about his journey. One of our most, I would say, profound and important Torah scholars that we have in our Jewish library and of all times. And he says different Mishnayot are said in his name in Pirkei Avot, and I chose one of them. And Rabbi Akiva says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah 14, source number 1. Rabbi Akiva says, or used to say, beloved is man, for he was created in God's image. It is a greater love that it was made known to him that he was created in God's image, as it said, for in the image of God did he make man. This is just to try and dive a little bit into what he's saying here. It's a very short part of the Mishnah. I didn't bring the entire Mishnah. We're going to focus on the first part, but it's very short, but very, I would say, heavy, in a sense that there is something very universal in a rabbi sitting in a Beit Midrash, in a Torah academy, and talking about the universe and about any human being, that we were all formed and created in the image of God, and therefore every human being, doesn't matter if he's Jewish, doesn't matter if he's Christian, doesn't matter if he's Muslim, doesn't matter if he's young, if he's old, doesn't matter his sexuality, doesn't matter who he is, his gender, he is beloved. Why? Because we were all created and formed in God's image. It's something that in the modern world we very much love to embrace. We know that it's a value, it's a Jewish value that every human being was created in God's image. We say it in Hebrew, you see in the Hebrew translation, it's called B'Tselem Elohim, right? Because the Torah says in Bereshit, B'Tselem Elohim asai Adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God created man in his form. And every human being has in his, it can be an neshama, the soul, it can be the intellect, depends how there's different approaches. What exactly is this uniqueness? But every human being as he is was created by God, and therefore every human being deserves a decent amount of dignity because he has what is called a form of God within his soul, within his creation. We are all, I know we're all familiar with this concept in Judaism, and I want to understand, if we say so, and Rabbi Akiva, who is saying so here, what does it mean that we are chosen people? If all mankind supposed to be equal, that we're all created and formed under God's image, what does it mean that we say we are the chosen people? We say it, for example, all the time. We'll see it in a minute, but think about the Kiddush. On Shabbos, we say, right? Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta. Sorry for my singing, but we say you've chosen us and you sanctified us among all nations, right? We say it every time in Kiddush. What do we mean when we say so? So first of all, in order to start, we need to define racism. It's very complicated to define racism these days. It's not so easy. It's not an easy mission. I brought what I very much, I would think, relate to, a very well-common and not too sophisticated definition to racism, taken from dictionary.com, a very good website that has different definitions from different terms. It's brought in your sources on source number 2. And it says as follows: racism is a belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human racial groups determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to the others. Do we all agree with it? I want us all to agree. Does anyone has any objection to this kind of definition? Because it's important before we continue on. Very good. Okay, we all agree with this definition. We all know, specifically after Second World War, that we know that racism is something that can lead into bad things. We see what happens in our own world. We see what happened just 5 years ago in the US regarding Black Lives Matter. There's still groups that maybe we thought achieved equality and achieved, I would say, equal opportunity or right for opportunity, and they're still claiming that there is racism, and they're still claiming that they are not treated equally or how they think they should be treated and how they deserve to be treated. And I want you to read 2 sources that I brought in the source sheet, source number 3 and source number 4. There's many others. I chose 2. Look what the Torah says. Deuteronomy, both in Deuteronomy. First one in source number 3, Deuteronomy 7, verse 6. For you, says God, are a holy people to Hashem, your God. Hashem, your God, has chosen you to be a people for his own possession, above all peoples who are on the face of the earth. Read again, source number 4, Deuteronomy 26:18. And Hashem has declared you this day to be a people for his own possession, as he has promised you, and that you should keep all his commandments. There's many others examples, folks, all around the Tanakh, all around the Bible, and not only in the Bible, also in the oral Torah, in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, in the books afterwards, that explain the fact that the Torah says we are the chosen people. We have something that not any other nation in the world has. Isn't that racism? According to what we just read in source number 2, we are, I would say, in that sense, inferior or we in that sense we have we have a superior or priority among other nations, among other religions, because God chose us among all of them, and therefore we're closer to God, and therefore we have the mitzvot and we have all the others. How should we understand all of this, and how can we resolve what seems as contradiction between what Rabbi Akiva is saying in the Mishnah, that everyone should be equal because everyone is beloved because it was created in the form of in the image of God, and how can we understand that along with those kind of verses? Moshe, is that going to be long or short?
But well, it all depends on how long you take with it. It's very short. I cannot stand this term. Since I was a child, I do not accept the term. I understand it very simply as this: we are chosen to offer an example of one particular way from which others can or cannot flow. We offer an example, nothing else. That's it. And even
okay, I'll add Moshe to the source sheet. You might see some people that maybe some rabbis that agree with you. So the first example, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just bring me to where I want to divide to. I want to dive into the question before we talk about racism. What does it mean that we are the chosen people? What does it mean when we say that? Maybe there isn't any problem with saying we're the chosen people. Maybe we should all understand it like Moshe Goldstein understands the term. So first of all, Rabbi Goldstein gave us the first answer. And this is, we are chosen to demonstrate something, to show to the world, to forecast something that all other people can follow. First answer. I want to invite you on a journey between different great giant Torah scholars, the Maharal of Prague, the Kuzari Rabbi Yehuda Levi, Rav Kook, Rabbi Sachs, Zichrono Livracha. Try and understand, first of all, before we dive into the Mishnah, what does it mean that we say we are the chosen people? What is the meaning of this term? We'll start with the Maharal of Prague. One of the greatest rabbis that we had around 500 years ago, was a huge Kabbalist, was a huge halachic authority, was a huge leader in Prague in general. And he wrote several books, amazing books about Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, the Sgula, as we say of Am Yisrael, we say the Sgula, the virtue of Am Yisrael, and all those kind of stuff. And he has a book called Tiferet Israel, the glory of Israel. Not Israel as a state, because there's no country back then, of course, but Israel, the nation, the people, the religion. And in this book, Tiferet Israel, what the Maharal, as they call him, Maharal of Prague, what he is saying is as follows. However, source number 5, look how he explains what it means that we're the chosen people. However, says the Maharal, the entire human race cannot be identical in their spiritual character. Granted that the entire human race is the same in their facial features and related matters, they are not identical in that some of them have more spirituality attuned portion than others, as known. For prophecy and holy inspiration, says the Maharal, and the Shekhinah, the divine presence, are unique to the nation God chose, to the exclusion of the other nations who were idolaters. Without a doubt, prophecy requires that the human soul be prepared for it. You will find this preparation uniquely in the nation which God chose. And from this, you see that the souls of this nation are more spiritually attuned in terms of having this preparation. What the Maharal is saying, very sophisticated words, but very simple idea. The Maharal is saying basically that the fact we are chosen people means one and only thing, means that we are chosen as a way for us to enable prophecy. Prophecy is the thing that is enabled by the fact that we have a special virtue. We are chosen, and therefore we can have prophecy in the world. But if we were not chosen, we would not have this vast amount of prophets. Now, I know what you're saying. We know about prophets not from Israel. There are prophets from other nations. We know, for example, about Bilam in the Torah, in Parshas Balak, in Sefer Bamidbar, in Numbers. The Torah tells us there is a Gentile who is a Navi. And there's an entire Torah portion, an entire Parsha talking about him and explaining how come he has a Nevuah, his prophecy and everything. I'm not going to dive into the very difficult questions, even though there are answers. How would the Maharal or any other rabbi that we're going to see here explain and get along with the fact there's other prophecies in other nations. But it's important to understand that according to the Maharal, there is a special virtue in every Jew, derived from the fact that he is Jew and he was born Jew. And that special virtue gives him the ability to become a prophet. And this is how the fact that the Jewish people are the chosen people, this is how, according to the Maharal of Prague, this entire, I would say, the decision or election, this is what this election is being expressed with, and giving us the benefit of being prophets. Any questions so far about the Maharal before we move to the Kuzari? Very simple, no problem. Let's move to the Kuzari. Let's move forward. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, one of the biggest rabbis around the 9th century. We're going earlier than the Maharal. All right, maybe we should have started with the Kuzari, but we're going earlier in time. We're in the 9th century. We're now in Spain, where religion and politics are one. We're in time where we'll be Inquisition, where there will be monarchy that will fight Jews and will pursue another many years later Jews because of what? Because they're only Jewish. We're in time where politics and Judaism, politics and Islam, politics and Christianity are one, and there is a constant fight between Muslims, Christians, and also Jews. And look what the Kuzari is saying in one of the most fundamental books. The Kuzari is not a person. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote a book called HaKuzari. This is actually a novel, a dialogue, a conversation, fascinating conversation, where there is a king. Some say imaginary kind of kingdom. Some say maybe that was a real story. But there is a king, which we don't know his name. He's a king of a kingdom called Kuzar. That's the name of the kingdom. And this king of Kuzar has a dream. And in his dream, God, no other, reveals himself to this king and tells this king, you know, you're a very decent person. I very much like your intentions, but your deeds, your actions are, as we say in French, comme ci, comme ça. They're not so much. You need to fix yourself and you need to correct yourself. So this king, terrified, wakes up in the morning, asks himself, what should I do? And Rabbi Yehuda Halevi writes down a book where this king goes, first of all, to a philosopher. And he asks a philosopher, what is your meaning in life? Tell me, what do you think is the meaning of life? What should I do with my dream? But he doesn't like the philosopher answers. And he goes to the Muslim. And he asks the Muslim, tell me, what should I do with my life? What is the meaning of life? And the Muslim doesn't like, and the Muslim answers him, but the king doesn't like his answer also. So he goes to the Christian, to the priest. And he asks the priest, what is the meaning of life? Tell me about Christianity. Maybe I should become Christian. But he doesn't like the Christian's answer also. And only then he goes to the rabbi. And he asks the rabbi fundamental questions about Judaism, about the meaning of life, about Torah, about Shabbat, about mitzvot and halacha, and everything you can think about that related to Judaism. And in this massive book, it's a very long book. In this book, the rabbi and the king are discussing with each other what are the foundations of Judaism and what are the values that our religion is following through. And in part of this, in the first article of this book, Kuzari, written again by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, which was a big poet also, and a big scientist, and a big halacha rabbi and philosopher and everything back then in Spain, he in general divides in one of his essays, one of his articles, the first one, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, when as playing the role of the rabbi that is answering this king, he says that the world is divided into 4 different levels. There's 4 different, the world in general, nature, everything, the existence is divided into 4 levels. Let's see what he has to say. What are those 4 levels in nature according to the Kuzari? This is source number 6. He calls them the behaviors. All right, levels, behaviors is the same thing. First of all, the organic behavior. The rabbi said, regarding organic behavior, I read in source number 6. Regarding organic behavior, we find that creatures require nourishment. They grow, reproduce their own kind, and each type of creature has its own necessary qualities and conditions. This is true about the plant and animal kingdoms, to the exclusion of non-living things in nature, such as earth, stone, metals, and pure elements. This is the lowest, most fundamental level in the world. There is nothing lower than that. Can someone disagrees? I think we all agree, right? That's one of the levels. What's above? One step forward. One level above is what he called the animal behavior. Animal behavior, the rabbi said, and regarding animal behavior, all animals share the same life force, which provides them with mobility, traits, senses, and the ability to process information, desires, and the like. Right? We have plants, we have animals. We all know in the same that they're less than human beings in that sense. But then he continues. He continues to what is called the intelligent behavior. This is level number 3 now. And the intelligent behavior is as follows. The rabbi continued, and regarding intelligent behavior, the human being is distinguished from all other animals. Man's higher intellect requires of him more refined behavior. The establishment of civilizations, the exercising of social justice, and other forms of conduct and etiquette. Very much makes sense. This is the intelligent behavior. And here, I didn't bring it inside, but here the king stops him for a second. Yeah, stops him. The rabbi asks the king, what do you think would be the next level? Do you think there is anything that is superior, is above intelligent behavior? Is there any level in nature, in existence that is above? And the king answers, I think there is. If I think about something, that would be very smart people or leaders or anyone that has more power in the world than others. But the rabbi doesn't like the answer. And he says, I think you're wrong. It's still within the intelligent behavior. But there is something above intelligent behavior, something above mankind, something above all human beings. And this is what is called the divine behavior. And he says as follows. The rabbi said, Yaakov's sons, the Jews, differed from all other peoples in their distinguished divinity. These distinctions seemed to place them upon a different level of creation. A new species, perhaps, that was angelic in nature. They all aspired towards prophecy, and many actually achieved it. Even those who did not could still approach prophetic levels due to their desirable acts, their holiness and purity, and their attachment to other prophets. Rabbi warned, know what you will answer to the heresy. He says, in other words, there are 3, we said there are 4 levels in nature. There is what we call organic behavior, there is the animal behavior, there is mankind, which is intelligent behavior, but there is something above mankind. And this is the virtue of the sons of Yaakov. But what is this virtue? No other than prophecy. Now, what is the difference between the Kuzari and the Maharal? We just said the Maharal is also prophecy. But if you pay attention to the very, very things that the Kuzari is saying, he's not saying, like the Maharal, that there is a virtue in the Jewish people, and this virtue comes to expression by prophecy. He says other thing. He says prophecy is the divine behavior. In other words, if you're a Jew and you're not a prophet, then you're fine. You're in the intelligent behavior. You're like any other mankind, like any other nation, no problem. But if you're a Jew that practices prophecy, you're above all people. And only Jews can practice prophecy. Therefore, Jews are chosen among all the people because they have the ability to become prophets. But if you don't have prophet, then if you're not a prophet, you don't prophecy, then no problem. You can become a prophet. You can work that, you can practice that, no problem. There's ways. But if you're not a prophet, says the Kuzari, says Rabbi Yehuda Levi, then you're like everyone else. But only Jews have the ability to become prophets, and this is what makes us superior among any other nation, that leads us and puts us in a place that no other nation is. So far, so clear? Any questions before we move forward to Rav Kook? I'll take a sip of water. Any questions? Ruchama, do you have a question?
Are they chosen because they are different, or they are different because they were chosen?
Thank you. This is exactly the difference between the Kuzari and the Maharal. This is exactly the difference. The Maharal says, first of all, they're different. First of all, they're different. That's what makes them chosen. The Kuzari says, no, they were chosen. And from that can be derived prophecy. You understand the difference? Yes, Vanessa.
Do you have a definition of a prophet?
I would say it as simple as possible, just like the Rama would say, as simple as possible. Someone that has connection with God in a way that he knows that God speaks to him. And how do you know that a prophet is a true prophet and not a false prophet? Because everyone can say that they have connection with God. If he's told something to the public more than 3 times, and those 3 times it really happened. This is the test.
Thank
All right? This is the test. Any more questions? Linda, do you have a question? Okay, I see you not.
I don't really have a question, but I'm confused. I mean, I think the whole concept confuses me. I'm not sure. I know that the Jewish people were chosen. I know that the Torah is the basis of our understanding, but I'm not sure how that brings all of us to the level of prophecy.
It doesn't, exactly. It doesn't. This is exactly what the Kuzari would say. The Kuzari says, you're a Jew like any other, you're Jewish, you're someone Christian, there's someone Muslim, there's someone atheist, no problem. You're all in the level of intelligent behavior. But you have, because you're Jewish, you have the potential to become a prophet. And when you become a prophet, when you fulfill this potential, this is the fact, then you become the chosen people. Then you become someone that is above any other people.
So in your first class, you said that prophecy disappeared with the Beit HaMikdash. So then we really don't have prophecy anymore.
That's right. That's right.
So
We
then
don't have
none of
it.
us have this potential
Exactly.
of becoming
Exactly.
a prophet.
This is called that our generation is lower than other generations in that sense. You're totally right. You're totally right. But B'ezrat Hashem, as we say, for days to come, we'll have prophecy again. Then it will be from Am Israel and not from other nations. This is what he says. Now, would you call it racism or not? I would not call it racism. I personally have a problem. I think every Jew should have a problem after 1939 that we try and divide the world into categories, into levels. We try to say that there is one group that is superior to other groups. I personally find it a little bit disturbing in our world. Again, that was written in the 9th century, so makes sense to be written back then. I have a little bit of problematic saying it today, but I'm not sure it will qualify the definition of racism in that sense. I still think that in that sense, we are the chosen people, almost like Moshe Goldstein said earlier, in a way that we have a mission, and that mission may be prophecy. That's right, we have a privilege. We have the ability to become prophets. No other nation have this ability, but I'm not sure I will call it racism in that sense, just to put that in brackets. Vanessa, you don't like what I'm saying?
It's not that I'm like going in circles in my mind. Just if our prophecy is on hold, does that mean we're not the chosen people for a minute?
No, because the chosen people means we have the potential to become prophets. We don't necessarily fulfill this potential, but only us have the potential to become those. You understand what I'm saying? The fact that God chose us means that he gave us the potential. We are the only group that has the potential, not any other group, according to the Kuzari.
Okay.
Makes more sense?
Okay.
Makes more sense? A little bit complicated,
Yes.
Anyhow, a little bit. Let's see what, if you like complexity, let's make it a little bit more complicated. Let's move to Rav Kook in source number 7. Rav Kook, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Kook, one of the biggest scholars in the 20th century, the one that is being, I would say, known to be the one that is known to be the one that established and led what is today the religious Zionism in Israel. The one that said that in Israel, in the nation of Israel, and in the land of Israel, there is holiness, and therefore there is a religious kind of aspect in a Jewish kingdom or in a Jewish state. And it's not only a secular state, but it has a religious aspect into the state itself, into the country, into the government of that kingdom. And he writes as follows when he talks about the virtue that Israel has. Look what he says. Rav Kook says that in source number 7, the difference between the Jewish soul, its essence and its internal yearnings, its ambitions, its traits, and its position, and the souls of all other nations on all of their levels is greater and deeper than the difference between the human spirit and the animal spirit. In the latter case, the difference is merely quantitative, but in the former, there is an essential qualitative difference. First of all, Rav Kook says there is a difference. Even in the 20th century, there is a difference, a very, very, very big difference between what? Between Jews and others. But look what he's saying. He's saying the Jewish soul. When he talks about the Jewish soul, that's a problem in translation. He's not talking about the person, the Jewish person. He talks about the Jewish nation, and I'll explain. In Rav Kook's philosophy, the Jewish nation has a soul, like an individual, like a person. This soul can be our, I would say, togetherness, something, the powers that Judaism has when it comes together, that no other nation has when they come together. We can feel it, God forbid, when there is tariffs and there is problems and troubles in the world. We feel that it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter who you are, to what shul you're affiliated to. We know there is something that glues us together in a sense that no other nation in the world has. And how do we know that no other nation in the world has? Because we're the only nation. In Jewish history, and Rav Kook talks about it a lot, we're the only nation in Jewish history that got spread out around the globe and maintained their culture and their identity throughout thousands of years in exile and managed eventually to become one back again and turn back into one state and one country under one land. And this is only thanks to the fact that we have something in our togetherness, not as individuals. Jew as an individual, worth nothing in that sense. But Jew, as part of the Jewish community, brings with him something, a virtue that turns into what is called, according to him, the Jewish soul. And this Jewish soul, this virtue of the group, is what makes us chosen people. The election that HaKadosh Baruch Hu elected us and chose us, God chose us, makes the chosen, brings it out of the group, but not out of the individual. In other words, I am not superior than any other human being out there, but the Jewish togetherness is superior than any other nation altogether. This is what Rav Kook explains and understands as the fact that the Jews are the chosen people. Again, we're not chosen individuals. We're Jews. We're chosen as group, as people in that sense. Any questions? I hope that was clear.
Even though I don't remember where it's written, even though we are chosen and all of the good things that you said, it said someplace, "Me'arsayich u'machrivaich mimech yetzeu."
Exactly, you're right. You're right. I think we said right. We say that those who destroy you, eventually, those who really ruin you, are the ones that's coming within you, not from the outside. We know that the greatest power of Judaism is when we're together, and when we are not together, that's the most dangerous thing. That no other nation can overcome us when we're united and we're together. But the moment we're separated and we fight with each other and we have conflicts, then we're vulnerable. Then we're sensitive, and then other nations can take advantage and eventually harm and attack us. We know that from Amalek, we know it from any other places. When we are not together, we lose. When we are together, we win. And this is something throughout history, every time. That's not a religious concept, it's a history concept. We can see it. Every time we see it's proven that when the Jewish people are together, they survive and they overcome, they thrive. When they're not, they collapse. And this is according to Rav Kook, this is what makes the Jews the Jewish nation, the chosen nation. In other words, it's not a chosen people, it's a chosen nation, the chosen togetherness of the nation. Thank you for that, Rucham. That was a wonderful, wonderful comment. This is Rav Kook. And we'll move now to a very modern philosopher before we finish the first section here of trying to understand what it means that we're chosen people, and then we'll move back to Rabbi Akiva in Pirkei Avot. But Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, he has a book actually called The Dignity of Difference, where he talks about all of this, but I didn't take it from that amazing book. Very much recommend. But he wrote down also an article called The Concept of the Chosen People. And look what he writes inside. Now, this is not translated. This is a real English. Thank God there is something in real English in our source sheet. So we'll read it as follows. In source number 8, Rav Sachs says as follows. However, it is interesting that whereas both Christianity and Islam took over monotheism from Judaism, they did not take over Judaism, its single most striking feature, which makes it structurally rare. And for all I know, structurally unique in the monotheisms of the world. Possibly Sikhism is that, but I don't know. But that is much more recent phenomenon. And here it is, that Judaism is a particularist monotheism, which neither Christianity nor Islam is. Let us state what that means. Number one, the God of Judaism is the God of the whole world. We need to understand that. When we say we're chosen people, it doesn't mean God is ours. We don't own God. We don't own the creation. We don't own what is the order of the world. Not like I'm sorry for the equivalent, but there's no room. But if I have to, when we say racism, not like, for example, the Nazi Germany in that sense, that they said there's no one, we don't share anything with Jews. Anything. We don't say anything with gypsies. We don't share anything with Jews. There is only us, which is the Ari, with the Ari kind of group, only us is the correct way of living the life. We own the truth. We know what is right and what is wrong, and therefore everyone that is wrong is our enemy. Judaism and Jews they don't say that. Even when we say we're chosen people, we don't say we own God. God is God of everyone. He's the God of my non-Jew neighbor, just as he is my God. The fact that I'm chosen doesn't mean he looks at me different, but the fact that I need to look at him different. And this is the thing. Rav Sachs is turning things upside down. He said the fact that God chose us, and I'll read it outside, you can read it furthermore inside. The fact that we are the chosen people doesn't mean that God brings us a virtue among all nations. It's not the chosen that gives us a privilege, but that's an election that gives us responsibility. And this is maybe a little bit connected to what Moshe Goldstein said earlier. We, according to Rav Sachs, were chosen. So from our perspective, we have duty. We have work that need to be done. But we don't have any privilege. It's not prophecy, and it's not a virtue, and it's not comparing us to other nations, and it's not all those kind of ideas. But rather, there is responsibility that derives from that, and that is from our perspective. Because from God's perspective, He is the God equally of all human beings as they are out there. Are we good with Rabbi Sachs? Wonderful, wonderful. So this closes our first section here, or let's say more than the first thing, the 2/3 of our class, which is about what exactly is the chosen people. So now we saw different approaches to that, and I will try to offer a fourth option that I will call it maybe understanding it from Rabbi Akiva. One second, Linda, okay? Maybe understanding it from Rabbi Akiva and from the Mishnah of Avot, and we'll do so by tracing back the history of Rabbi Akiva, an amazing history that Rabbi Akiva has to offer to us in his journey. Yes, Linda, is it a short question? You want to wait for the end? Yeah.
No, it's just a comment. I think when you read Rabbi Sachs, it's something that can fit more into our understanding of Judaism at this time. I think we can't relate so well to the other interpretations. Even Rav Kook was difficult to relate to.
This is the power of Rav Sachs, that in our world, he is the spokesperson of Judaism, in a sense that he manages to deliver very sophisticated or sometimes complicated and challenging ideas to the public. This is his virtue, and this is our loss, that he's not with us anymore in that sense. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. So the story of Rabbi Akiva. First of all, what do we know about Rabbi Akiva? First of all, we said we know he is a great, great, great Torah scholar. But what about his family? Where did he come from? What made him say the Mishnah that he said? You remember, every class we're trying to trace back the history of those rabbis and try to understand what led them to say what they said in the Mishnah. So the first thing we know about Rabbi Akiva is as followed in source number 9. We know that there was an incident. I'm not going to talk about it now because we don't have the time. There was a rabbi called Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel was head of yeshiva. And Rabban Gamliel was not so liked by his students. And because of different things that happened, they decided to fire him from his position. And they decided they need to replace him with other student, that the other student will, the next generation will become the new Rosh Yeshiva. And when the students gathered together to decide who's going to replace this Rosh Yeshiva, Rabban Gamliel, the name of Rabbi Akiva popped up. And look what they're saying in source number 9. When they were gathering together, shall we establish Rabbi Akiva in his place, in the place of the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabban Gamliel? The sages rejected that option. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva, who descended from a family of converts, would be vulnerable. Perhaps due to Rabban Gamliel's resentment, he would cause him to be divinely punished, as he lacks the merit of his ancestors to protect him. First thing we know about Rabbi Akiva, not getting into the very interesting discussion about why cannot he become a Rosh Yeshiva because of that, but the first thing we know is that Rabbi Akiva is a descendant of converts. He's a Bein Gerim, as we say in Hebrew. He was not, his family is not from the shtetl. His family is not from the best midrash world. His family is from something out there that is not necessarily natural and regular into the Jewish discourse. Put that in your minds, and as we talk to understand how come Rabbi Akiva said what he said in the Mishnah. Another thing that we know about Rabbi Akiva, and I know that some of you probably know this story, is the story how Rabbi Akiva started to learn Torah. And this is a wonderful romantic story. It appears actually in 2 sources, and there's 2 different versions of the story. I seamed them together into one. You'll see it in source number 10. We'll read everything. First appears in Avot Rabbi Natan, and another version appears in Ketuvot. I tried to make it together so it will turn into one complete narrative. And it says as follows in source number 10. What were the origins of Rabbi Akiva? They say that he was 40 years old and had still not learned anything. 40 years old. Think about it. He's the son of conversion that came not from a Jewish family, and he's already 40. 40. Think that back then Jews would learn from age 6, 4, 5, 6. It would be in yeshiva. He's 40. He doesn't know what Shema Yisrael, doesn't know Aleph Beit. Think about it. He was 40 years old and had still not learned anything. Once he was standing in the mouth of a well, and he said, who carved the hole in this stone? There's a well, there's a stone, there's a hole in the stone. Who carved this hole in the stone? They said to him, who are they? We don't know. But they said to him, it is from the water, which constantly falls on it day after day. And then there is a hole in the stone that becomes. Rabbi Akiva immediately, and they said, Akiva, don't you know this from the verse? There is a verse in Job says, water erodes stones. Did you learn Torah? It says in the Torah, you don't need to learn science for that. Open the book of Job, you'll see it written there. Rabbi Akiva immediately applied this, all the more so to himself. He said, if something soft can carve something hard, then all the more so the words of Torah, which are like steel, can engrave themselves on my heart, which is but flesh and blood. He immediately went to studying Torah. One thing that we know about Rabbi Akiva, he started at the age of 40. I gave the alternative story, the more romantic story. It appears in Ketuvot, in the Talmud, 62b. Rabbi Akiva was the shepherd of Ben Kalva Savua, one of the richest guys in Yerushalayim. The daughter of Ben Kalva Savua, named Rachel, saw that he was humble and refined. She said to him, if I betroth myself to you, will you go to study hall? Will you go to the study hall to learn Torah? He said to her, yes. She became betrothed to him privately and sent him off to study. Her father heard this and became angry. He removed her from his house and took a vow prohibiting her from benefiting from his property. First thing we know about Rabbi Akiva, he was old. He was 40 years old. It depends what narrative we read, whether maybe that was both of them together, maybe it was this or that, we don't know. But in that terms that he was old and he went to learn Torah, not because maybe in this other story, not because he wanted to, but because his wife, he really wanted this girl. So that girl told him, you're not a yeshiva bucher. I need someone who is more gestalt. And go please and learn some Torah so you can, you'll know how to say Kiddush and Shabbos when we're together. So he went up and learned Torah, back to Avot Rabbi Natan, back to the first narrative. He went with his son. According to this narrative, he had a son already. He went with his son and they sat down by the school teachers. He said to one rabbi, teach me Torah. Think about the father, 40 years old, and the son sitting in the cheder at the first day of school. And the father is saying, Rabbi, teach me Torah. He then took hold of one end of the tablet and his son took hold of the other end. The teacher wrote down Aleph and Beit for him, and he learned them Aleph to Tav, and he learned them, there's another version, the book of Leviticus, and he learned it, depends what he learned here, but it started from Aleph Beit, and he went on studying until he learned the whole Torah. Then he went and sat before Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Joshua. My masters, he said, open up the sense of the Mishnah to me. When they told him one law, he went off and sat down to work it out for himself. Think he started at 40. The Aleph, what was it written for? He asked question, the Beit, what was it written for, and so on and on. Why was this thing said? He asked the rabbis. He kept coming back and kept asking them until he reduced his teachers to silence. First of all, this is ambition. This is an ambitious guy. He wanted to learn and he's very motivated. He went to learn. First of all, there's many, many lessons that we can all relate and get from this kind of story. First of all. Second of all, we understand that Rabbi Akiva is not the classic scholar. He's not the classic scholar. He wasn't born to a rabbi, to a Rosh Yeshiva. He wasn't born in the Jewish shtetl and was part of the Jewish Kiddush club at shul since he was 4 years old. He came from outside. He's from the neighborhood. He's one of the guys. He's one of the dudes. He decided at the age of 40, doesn't matter why, we'll talk maybe because of his love to his wife, he decided he want to go out and learn Torah. And he's the son of converts. Think about that. He is not a regular type. Think, how can we understand the Mishnah in that light? We'll come to that in a minute. How can we understand what he says in that light? But Rabbi Akiva has something amazing. Rabbi Akiva developed what is called the philosophy of love. The first thing that we see in Rabbi Akiva is the love to his wife. That's the first thing we see in his story, right? We see he has a life for his wife because of her, according to the story in Ketuvot. According to the story, he went and learned Torah because of his love to his wife. First of all, look how it continues in Ketuvot. Rabbi Akiva went and sat for 12 years in the study hall until the age of 52. When he came back to his house, he brought 12,000 students with him. And he approached, and as he approached, he heard an old man saying to his wife, "For how long will you lead the life of a widow of a living man, living alone while your husband is in another place?" She said to him, if he would listen to me, he would sit and study for another 12 years. When Rabbi Akiva heard this, he said, I have permission to do this. So he turned back, made a turnover, went back to yeshiva, and learned for 12 more years in the study hall. When he came back, he brought 24,000 students with him. His wife heard and went out toward him to greet him. Her neighbor said, borrow some clothes and wear them, as your current apparel is not appropriate to meet an important person. She said to them, a righteous man understands the life of his beast. This is from Proverbs. She was a Talmud. She knew Torah. You can say she knew Torah when he didn't know, but she knew Pasuk. When she came to him, she fell on her face and kissed his feet. His attendants pushed her away as they did not know who she was. And listen to that line, folks, listen to that line. And he said to them, leave her alone, as my Torah knowledge and yours is actually hers. How romantic. Rabbi Akiva, first of all, he is a person that we know he loves his wife. And he knows how to pay gratitude to his wife. This is first phase of his philosophy of love. Look at the other phase in the Mishnah in Yadayim, source number 11. Rabbi Akiva said, far be it, no man in Israel disputed that the Song of Songs, you all know the book Song of Songs, it's a book of love between mankind, Am Yisrael, and God. That's a book that is written by Shlomo HaMelech, which is one, from the beginning to the end, a constant love song for a husband to his wife. It's a wonderful book to learn. Maybe we'll learn it in another series. But it's a constant love song from a husband to his wife. And look what Rabbi Akiva, when the rabbis said maybe we should not add it to our Bible, to our Tanakh, maybe it's not so holy. Rabbi Akiva was the one who stood on his feet and said, no way. On my dead body, you're not including this book in the Tanakh. Look what he said. No man in Israel disputed that the Song of Songs saying that it does not defile the hands. Now you need to understand, a book that does not defile the hands is an unholy book. And he says, no, this book is holy. For the whole world is not as worthy as the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holy of holies. Folks, this is understandable. A guy that loves his wife so much and demonstrates his love to his wife, it's very sure that his love to Kadosh Baruch Hu will be also demonstrated by the most lovable book. He wants that the book of love, the love song of Songs, Shir Shirim, would be a holy book, part of our Tanakh. And he's demonstrating for that, and he's fighting for that, because he's also believing in loving of God. And the fact that a Jew or every human being needs to love God, not only to respect God, not only to worship God, but also to love God, which is what derives from that book. Third phase and last phase of the philosophy of love of Rabbi Akiva. The Talmud Yerushalmi says, the Torah says in Vayikra, love your fellow as yourself. Ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha. Rabbi Akiva says, this is a fundamental principle of the Torah. Ze klal gadol b'Torah. Rabbi Akiva loves his wife. Rabbi Akiva believes in loving God, and Rabbi Akiva believes in loving his fellow neighbor. Rabbi Akiva has a philosophy of love in those three phases: to his wife, to God, and to his fellow neighbor. We're not going to talk about the derech, because Rabbi Akiva is also very much important. He very much wants that the derech would be something, the correct way would be something that everyone can follow. He thinks that first of all, you can see maybe only in let's do it fast. Let's do source number 13. Look what the Talmud in Chagiga says in source number 13. The sages taught, 4 entered the orchard, Pardes. In other words, it means dealt with the loftiest secrets of Torah. And they are as follows: Ben Azai, Rabbi called Ben Azai, Rabbi called Ben Zoma, Rabbi called Acher, which is the name of Elisha ben Avuya, and the Rabbi Akiva. Four rabbis entered, learned the world of the secrets of the Torah. Ben Azai glimpsed at the divine presence and died. Ben Zoma glimpsed in the divine presence and was harmed. He lost his mind. Acher, Rabbi Elisha ben Avuya, chopped down the shoots of saplings. In other words, he became heretic. But only Rabbi Akiva came out safely. Now you'll ask why. Why did he the only one who came out safely? Shir Shirim Rabbi, he says in the Midrash, in source number 14, Rabbi Akiva said, it is not, I came out safe. Why the only one? It is not because I am greater than my colleagues. Rather, this is what the sages taught in the Mishnah. Your actions will draw you near, and your actions will distance you. Rabbi Akiva said, I am not greater than any of my fellow Jews, than any of my fellow rabbis. The only thing that matters is your derech, is your way, is your actions. If your actions are good, you'll be forward, you'll draw forward. If your action is not so good, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will distance you. And I think that by understanding now the complete character of Rabbi Akiva, we can understand several things. First of all, his Torah is a mature Torah. Someone who starts learning Torah at the age of 40, his Torah is not like someone who starts learning Torah at the age of 3 or 4. He comes with life, with experiencing life. He has already something that he achieved. He has suffered in life. He knows what it means to be a grown-up. And only then he enters the world of Torah. There is no way that his Torah will be different. And we know that his Torah is not different. We know that the fact that he started at the age of 40 and the fact that he came from a house of conversion, we know that his Torah that his Torah is not the same Torah as anyone else. His Torah is Torah of love. His Torah is Torah of loving your wife, of loving the Kadosh Baruch Hu God, of loving your fellow Jew just like you love yourself, of understanding that the way, the actions, what you really want to do is more important than anything else. The meaning behind the thing is more important than the thing itself. And we can now understand why Rabbi Akiva said what he said in the Mishnah. When he said now, it's very much understandable. Someone who knows how the people outside are and whose greater family are also non-Jews, and he started learning Torah at the age of 40, He is the kind of a rabbi that would come and say, every man is beloved in the eyes of God, because every man was born and created in the image of God. It reminds me, and I'll finish with that story, that Mori Rabbi, my rabbi, my teacher, Rabbi David Bigman, was my Rosh Hashiva, and he grew up in Detroit, not so religious, in a kind of a Jewish affiliated kind of family in Detroit, in a not so Jewish neighborhood. And he tells the story that when he was young, he would go out from his house and his fellow friends were not Jews, some guys in Detroit that called him to play with him basketball. And he says that they would choose him every time, the first one, even though he wasn't such a good player, because they didn't want him to be insulted. So they chose him in. And he says that many years later, those memories from his childhood, being just a normal Jew, but no one that didn't go to shul or something, but just being a Jew that knows and meets other people who are not Jewish, this is something that changed his Torah forever. From the moment he got and entered the Beit Midrash, the Torah hall, the study hall, he understood that his Torah would be different. The way he approaches and reacts to people who are different than him is different because he knows how it is. He knows them. He experienced them. He knows what it is to live with them. Same thing I think would be with Rabbi Akiva. When Rabbi Akiva says you need to love every mankind is loved, every man, every human being is loved because he was equally, because he was created in the image of God. In other words, he says, I know what it is to be out there. I know those people. They're my families. They're myself. I started learning at the age of 40, and we are all equal in that sense. And I don't think he denies the fact that we're the chosen people. I think he offers another answer for being chosen people. When he says that the derech, the way you're doing things is what's important, and not the thing itself. The thing is very important also, but not as the derech, not as the way, not as the thing that you say, what are your intentions? What is your kavanah? What is your meaning? We are the chosen people because God chose our derech. God chose our ways, not us, but our ways, according to Rabbi Akiva. And therefore, this is what means we're chosen people, but it doesn't mean by any sense, but by all means, it doesn't mean we're superior to any other human being, to any other group, to any other nation, even though we think maybe people are wrong and they're mistaken. It doesn't make us better than them. It doesn't make us better human beings than them. It doesn't make us superior to them. And we learned that from the philosophy of love of a rabbi that in the age of 40, the first time he entered the Beit Midrash, and that he came from a family of non-Jews. Thank you very much for participating in this class, in all the other two classes of this series. I want to thank again, wonderful Beth Tikvah for organizing and hosting this wonderful class. I want to thank Daniel for leading and co-hosting this all this series. Thank you so much. It was a big help, and for sending all them emails and have been patient for my to my reminders and emails all the time to his inbox. And I want to thank also Rabbi Grover for the wonderful hosting in Beth Tikvah. And yeah, I look forward, first of all, hearing from you. I'm going to stay on the Zoom a little bit. If you have any comments, you want to share, any questions, I'm going to stay on the Zoom. And I look forward to be back soon as possible with another series to our Monday 2 or 2:15. We'll see slot. And we'll learn something else. We'll see what we're going to learn. If you have any suggestion, I'm here to listen. So thank you very much, those in person. Thank you very much to those on Zoom. And Bezrat Hashem, we will see you soon.